All right, Phil, we're going to continue to talk. I was going to talk to you about this, but let's talk to Sara about it. Worker shortages due to COVID still disrupting the airline industry. For a closer look, let's welcome Sara Nelson, International President of the Association of Flight Attendants. Her union represents nearly 50,000 flight attendants at 20 airlines. The union is currently having a dispute, in fact, with Delta, whom her union does not represent, but is seeking to unionize there. Delta shortened their COVID isolation policy from 10 days to 5 following a change in CDC guidelines that Delta and other airlines had lobbied for. Nelson's union has urged health officials and airline management to keep the 10-day isolation policy in place. Sara, thanks for joining us. And what I was going to mention to Phil or you or anyone who would listen is, on a good day, 50,000 flights up and down, takeoff, gates, weather. I mean, on a good day, this is a logistical challenge. To say that you throw in, a couple of clouds, a couple of fronts, and then a very infectious virus, and as we now know, all hell can break loose and has. I feel for everybody involved, almost.
Thank you, Joe. And first of all, Happy New Year to you and to Andrew and to Becky. It's good to see all of you. Yeah, it is really hard. The airline industry is a tough industry, and we have been operating in crisis mode for 2 years. Let's recognize that there's not really been an ability to forecast here. All you can do is best plan with what you know, but the entire pandemic has meant that we can't look back at other years and understand what we need to do now. The airlines learned that in the fall when they realized that they couldn't plan to staff flights at the same level that they did pre-pandemic because people were just not able to pick up as many overtime hours or not willing to pick up that voluntary time because of concerns around COVID and also because of the conflict on the planes. So we're in a really different place here. It's crisis mode. The other thing that I would just note is that we did have a lot of storms over the holidays, which impacted this even further. And we had the problems with Omicron. If we did not have all of those flight cancellations because of weather and because of crew shortages and other employee shortages, you would have also been hearing about the drop in or the cancellations that were going on because the passengers were getting sick too, and they had concerns as well.
So Sara, if let's say that you were trying to run Delta or trying to run United, and you're watching the cancellations on a daily basis, and all the people that are inconvenienced and all the media and the press that writes about it. And then the CDC came out and said, you know what, do 5 days, not 10. Wouldn't you immediately sort of embrace that just for the possibility of having more people available, more crews? And you're trying to deal with this horrific situation. Do you think that the safety or the being more prudent overrides getting people where they're trying to go on time? I guess that's your take.
Well, I think that we can all agree that safety has to be there. There has to be no question about safety, or else people are not going to buy airplane tickets. I mean, we really saw a demand return when we had the broad access to the vaccine. And so people felt more safe. And we also had done a lot of communicating around the kind of controlled environment that we have on the airplane, with the masks, with the air filtration, with the deep cleaning, with the changes to the service procedures. So it's all of it combined, a layered approach. So here's what our concern was over the holidays. Was that at other airlines, we negotiated incentive pay for workers to pick up trips, and that really helped the operation for those people who were well and could pick up that additional time. To lobby the CDC based on staffing shortages alone sends a really mixed message to the public, and we're really concerned about that for the employees, but also for the safety that we are communicating to the public. So our biggest concern right away is that when you have a major policy change like this, especially at an airline the size of Delta or United Airlines, it takes a while to communicate that policy to the workers, communicate it through all of your levels of management so that everyone is doing the right thing. What Delta led on was asking the CDC to reduce the days from 10 to 5 for staffing reasons. And we talked with other airlines. We were very busy after this came out to say, hey, let's talk about this. A lot of them held off, and we're talking about the policies now. We're getting that in place. What they're doing is a nuanced policy here so that people who are well and are testing well at some of the other airlines are able to come back after those 5 days. We're not saying that we shouldn't have that in place, but what we didn't want to do was send the message to workers that you should come to work sick. And the driving force, the narrative here that was put out was that this was about staffing, and it was sending the message that they wanted people to come back to work. We were very concerned about people coming back to work sick, and our biggest concern when Delta first announced their policy was that it did not include the provision that the CDC had for asymptomatic workers coming back to work at those 5 days. So this is really about clarity, making sure that we're not undermining safety, and making sure that we're not sending a message to the workers or the supervisors who are confused about this too, that they should be forced to come back to work sick.
Hey, Sara, I believe you genuinely care and worry about worker safety, but underneath this as well is a separate issue, which is a power struggle, if you will, between Delta, which has not been a unionized airline, as you know, and your union, and an effort to turn it into one. And I want you to speak to that, if you could, because Delta has historically been looked at as one of the shining examples of a non-unionized airline that has succeeded, in part, at least the argument has gone, because it has not been unionized, and in fact that their workers have been paid, perhaps in some cases, better than unionized workers because of the flexibility that they've had to manage their business.
So, Andrew, I have to just disagree with that. We've done the economic analysis, and we know what it's like going to the bargaining table with the other airlines. The costs for Delta flight attendants is far underneath what United or American pay because of the other provisions of the contract, the reassignment provisions, the healthcare provisions, the sick leave provisions. All of those other things are really hold up that pay. And at the end of the day, the Delta flight attendants are paid less. And that puts pressure for us at the bargaining table to not be able to move forward better on contracts at United or American or the others. So that's just simply not true. But also, what we said here was that Delta would really benefit from having a union on the property. We'd be able to talk about these issues. There are ongoing questions from the workforce about how this policy is applying. We're continuing to get those questions. So even where the policy may have been improved after we raised some concerns, and Delta did do that, they updated their policy, we're still having issues. And if they had the union on the property, we'd be able to work through those. Delta pilots have raised concerns too, and they're dealing with that directly with the airline because they have that legal collective bargaining relationship. We have that going on at every other airline, but you're not hearing about it in the news because we have that legal collective bargaining relationship, and we're able to work through those issues. I think the biggest reason that Delta should think about having a union for its flight attendants or respecting their rights is the $12 billion that they got in the past 2 years that were the result of the unions pushing for that plan and working with the industry to get it. What better example of how this can be a benefit to the company than that?
Sara, just real quick, though, do your calculations include the stock that Delta has distributed over the years? I ask because
yes,
that's
absolutely.
something that clearly they're doing that the other airlines historically have not done, or at least not done nearly at the same type of level.
Well, what we've seen is profit sharing in recent years, and the stock has been distributed to other airlines, other airline workers, obviously following the bankruptcies. And we do put that into the calculations and into our assessment of the total compensation package, and it's still well beneath the unionized carriers and undercuts our bargaining everywhere else, like I said.
All right. Sara, we're good to see you. We check in a lot with you on all these issues, and I don't know. When you said Happy New Year, I immediately thought of a Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I think you're late. I don't think. I can't remember when Larry David was stopped. I think it was like the 5th or 6th of January. He said no more Happy New Years, but I'm going to take that. We have not seen each other, so I'm going to let that slide, and I'm going to say back to you.
Thanks, Joe.
Say back to you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, because we haven't seen you, and we could use a happy. We could use a decent year, you know what I mean? One of these years, fingers crossed. All right.
We
See you
could,
later.
and
Thanks.
I know you're going to talk to Ed soon. Tell him hi. Let him know I'd love to sit down with him and work through these issues.
I was going
Take
to ask
care.
you to stay, and then I said, you know what? I was going to ask you to stick around for that. And I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that because we want him to come on. Anyway, thank you. See you,
All right,
Sarah.
take care, Joe.
All right.